Hey y'all, it's been almost 4 years since I started my YouTube journey, and I want to take this opportunity to thank every single person that has watched, liked, commented, and even subscribed to my channel. Your support is truly appreciated. With that being said, I thought it would be fun to compile some of my original video footage from when I first started my channel, bringing you 15 Dollar Tree Spring farmhouse DIYs. I know the footage is not as clear as I would like for it to be, but I still think you're really going to enjoy this video. For the first project, I am using 2 of Dollar Tree's long signs, and I'm going to go ahead and just remove the metal hearts from the top, and then I'm going to take some sandpaper and sand that down because I want to use these sides of the signs. I'm also going to remove the hanger and the staples from the back so it'll have a nice flat surface so that I can glue these 2 pieces together. So my signs, every time I get them at Dollar Tree, they're always bowed, they're never straight, but I want to keep these grooves on the outside of each piece. So I'm going to glue these 2 together to not only straighten it up, but it's also going to make it very sturdy, so it'll be able to stand when I put everything together, and you'll see what I'm talking about later on in the video. I'm just going to put a nice good amount of hot glue on there and press really firmly until I can get this as flat as possible. And then I'm also going to be using one of these wood crates from Dollar Tree that has the grooves there in the front. And I'm going to paint both of these pieces with 2 coats of my Waverly White chalk paint. Now the sign itself, I made sure I painted the entire piece, including the back and the sides. And the crate, I painted the inside and outside except for the very back because you're not going to be able to see that. Now I'm going to use some poster stickers from Dollar Tree, and I took my ruler and measured down from the top part of the sign about 1 inch so that I could start placing my stickers. And I'm using the middle part of the sign as a guide to keep everything centered up. And you're just going to want to make sure that you keep an equal amount of distance between each letter. So I'm just going to spell out the word welcome and make sure that I press each one of these stickers down. Once I have all my stickers in place, I am going to go back over this with some matte Mod Podge just to make sure that I seal those stickers in and that they don't peel off. Now I will be attaching the crate to the bottom of this sign, but I'm not going to do it just yet. I'm lining it up because I want to create a border around the word welcome to make it pop out. I took and measured about 1/4 inch off of each edge of the sign, and when I got down to the E, I just measured 1/4 inch off of the E. Then I'm just going to take my ruler and connect all of my markings together to give me a guide to make sure I have everything straight before I go back in with my oil-based Sharpie marker, which you can purchase from Hobby Lobby, or Michael's may have them, I'm not sure. And then I'm just going to use my ruler again to give me a nice clean straight line. And I just think this turned out so gorgeous. It really makes the word welcome pop out. Now I'm going to attach my crate to the very bottom of the sign, making sure that it's flush. And I'm going to use a good amount of hot glue and let that glue set up. And now this sign can stand up on its own. To decorate the inside of this sign, I'm just going to cut down some Dollar Tree styrofoam. And then I'm going to use some greenery from Hobby Lobby. I've had this in my stash for a while. And I'm also using some of these really pretty purple flowers from Dollar Tree. I just cut mine off of the bundle, and I'm going to place those into the styrofoam until I get it nice and full and the way I think that it looks really good. And I love this greenery because it hangs over the front of the crate, and it looks so realistic and so pretty, and I absolutely love how this project turned out. I think this would be perfect in an entryway or next to your door. I wouldn't recommend putting it outside, but I love how it turned out. Today's video is part of a spring collab with one of my dearest friends here on YouTube. You have seen me do several collabs with her. As a matter of fact, I did my very first collab with her, and that is Jenny at Lovely Moments Creating. She is extremely talented. She makes beautiful and simple DIYs using budget-friendly items. When you're finished watching my video, I hope that you will go over, check out Jenny's video. I'm going to have a link to that in my description box below. Send her some love. Let her know that I sent you. You will not be disappointed. I know you're going to love Jenny as much as I do. For project number 2, I'm going to start off with this metal pail from Dollar Tree. After I remove the hanger, I'm going to use those holes on the side where the hangers were as a guide to draw a straight line down so that I can cut this in half. If you have some tin snips, that would work so much better. I started off with some pruning shears and then came back in with some really heavy duty scissors. Just be super careful because that metal is very sharp and you don't want to cut yourself. Once I finally get this apart, I'm going to take some pliers and then straighten up all of those edges around the side that bent in as I was cutting them, and I'm going to do that for both of the pails. Then I'm going to take some Dollar Tree foam board and trace around the pails so that I could create a backing for this. Once I get that cut out, I'm just going to slide that down into the back of the pail to make sure it fits, and then I can secure that in with some hot glue going around all those edges. Since I'm going to be painting this piece, I went ahead and then put glue right on the top edge of each side of the metal so that I would not take a chance on cutting myself as I'm painting it. And I did that for all 4 sides for both, well, 2 sides for both pails. And you're going to do the exact same thing for the other one, creating that backing with that styrofoam. Once I have all of these together, I'm going to paint these with 1 coat of my absolute favorite gray chalk paint. I have this linked in my Amazon store if you are interested in it. It provides excellent coverage. It only takes 1 coat and it is gorgeous. I did make sure I painted it down inside of the pail. You guys, you don't have to paint the back. I went a little crazy with the paint, so you don't have to paint that. I'm using some black chalkboard craft paint from Dollar General, as well as my Waverly white chalk paint. I took a makeup sponge and just randomly put dots of white and black paint all over these pails. I'm going to be creating a galvanized look. Once I get all my dots on there, I'm just going to take the excess paint that's on the sponge and then dab all in between all of those dots. Now, it is going to look super messy as you start, but I promise it's going to be really pretty when we get finished. Don't worry about making any mistakes because you can always go back in, add white or black or whatever you need to get the look that you're going for. Make sure you get the bottom of the pail as well as the rim so that everything looks nice and cohesive. I did the exact same thing on the second pail. Now this part, I took a dry brush, stiff chip brush, and some Waverly mineral chalk paint and dry brushed over it, but it did not give me the effect I was going for, so I just stopped doing that and went in with my favorite gray chalk paint, and then I heavily dry brushed over this entire piece. So once you get that on there, if you feel like you need some more highlights, once that gray paint dries, you can go back in, add more white or black or whatever you're missing, and then you can dry brush over top of that again because I wanted to make sure that some of that white peeked through. Make sure you let it completely dry, and this really gave me that galvanized look that I was going for. Now I'm going to set these to the side for just a moment, and I am going to be using some of Dollar Tree's wood planks. You're actually going to need 8 of them because I'm making 2 sets of everything. So I'm going to paint 2 of them in my Waverly white chalk paint, and then I'm going to paint another 2 in my favorite gray chalk paint, which is Deco Art Americana Decor. And the third one, I'm going to paint 2 of those in the mineral chalk paint. And then the fourth one, I will paint 2 of those in the truffle chalk paint. Now, I only put 1 coat on each because I'm going for a distressed look. So here with the white, I did make sure that I let some of that wood peek through. And I am going to go back in later and sand that down because I didn't have enough wood showing that I wanted. For the truffle, I started to sand it and it was not quite giving me the effect I wanted for this piece. So I went in with some Apple Barrel Warm Buff acrylic paint and then dry brushed all over this piece. Once again, you're making 2 sets, so you'll be doing 2 pieces at one time. And then this gave me the effect that I wanted. and I just think that's gorgeous. For the white one, I went back in and just pulled out some of that wood so it would have a nice weathered look. If you don't like the weathered look, you could just leave them the solid colors or paint them whatever colors you like. For the gray one, I went in with the white chalk paint and just distressed over that. So now it looks like a piece of gray washed weathered wood that's been sitting out for years. And I love how this one turned out. For the mineral, I just put one coat on and made sure that some of that wood showed through. So now that I have all 8 pieces, I'm going to take some of these 5-gallon paint stir sticks. You can pick these up at Lowe's. You're going to need 4 of them. I cut 4 of those down to 13.5 inches. And then I came back in with my sandpaper and made sure that I sanded all those ends that I cut so everything would be nice and smooth. Now I'm going to paint these pieces using the Waverly chalk paint in mineral and just give those one coat. After my paint sticks dried, I'm just going to put them up on the sides and attach my wood planks on top of them. I'm attaching them with some Gorilla wood glue because I'm not going to put any staples in it. Those paint sticks are pretty thin and I didn't want to split the wood. And the glue is going to hold it really well because these are not heavy at all. I'm putting the wood glue on, but then I'm going to also go back in with some hot glue so that that hot glue can hold it in place until that wood glue sets up. And I'm going to place the white one at the top. I'm just making sure that I keep it flush to the outside edges of the paint sticks as well as the top part of the paint sticks, so everything's nice and square and even. Now I started off by putting my first one at the top, and then I'll go in and put another one at the bottom so that when I place the 2 in the middle, I can make sure I have the same distance between all of the planks. And I'm just going to attach those in the exact same way with the wood glue and the hot glue. And once I have those in place, I'm going to take the other 2 paint sticks and the other 4 planks and create an identical piece. Once I have all of those together, I'm going to create a hanger for the back using some nautical rope from Dollar Tree. And I just cut 2 lengths down. They're roughly maybe 5 inches long. I didn't measure them. And then I'm just going to secure those in with hot glue right there at the paint stick and the top part of the plank. I also go back in with some scrap burlap fabric so that I can put some extra glue on top of the rope and then press that fabric down to give it some added stability. Like I said, they're not very heavy, but I wanted to make sure that these hangers don't come off. I'm going to repeat this exact process on the second pallet sign as well. So these look like really cute pallet signs. I'm going to be using some gingham print or gingham check ribbon. This came from Hobby Lobby in their sewing section. And I'm just going to hot glue one piece of ribbon at the very top of each pail, making sure that I go underneath the rim at the top of the pail. And I thought this just gave it just an added something extra. I just love how this turned out, which I love buffalo check and gingham print anyway. I'm going to put some styrofoam into these pails because I'm going to be putting some florals in there. Now I can attach my pails to my signs, and I'm going to use some E6000 and some hot glue. And again, that E6000 is going to give it that nice permanent hold, and that hot glue is going to hold it in place till the E6000 sets up. And I'm just going to put that in the middle of the bottom 2 planks, and I'll do the exact same thing for the other pail. I am going to be using some of this greenery from Hobby Lobby, as well as some Baby's Breath from Dollar Tree, and some white flowers from Dollar Tree. I chose to go with greenery and white because I really didn't want to take away from the colors of the pallet sign as well as the pail, but you could certainly decorate this with whatever color you desire. And I love how they turned out. I think they're gorgeous. I'm going to be using this sign from Dollar Tree that has this nice wood frame edge. And I begin by heating up the glue that's holding all that glitter on with my hair dryer. Then I can go in with my sandpaper and sand most of the glitter off until I get it pretty smooth. I'm going to be covering this up, but I wanted to have it as smooth as I could get it. Now I'm going to paint this with my Waverly white chalk paint, and I did give the wood frame part 2 coats and the inside of the sign one coat because I'm going to cover this up with some fabric. And I took my measurements of the width, and it was like 7 3/4 inch wide. And I am taking a sheet of this burlap fabric, which came from burlapfabric.com. They sell these sheets in 12-inch by 12-inch pieces. Now the edges are not completely straight, so I did go in and cut a straight line to make sure that I could get my 7 3/4 inch width correct all the way across the entire piece. Then I just laid that in the sign to make sure everything was going to fit width-wise before I marked off the length so that I could cut that down. Once I cut that down, I always make sure that my fabric is going to fit in there nice and snugly before I attach this to the actual sign. And I am attaching it with some matte Mod Podge, and I just put a nice, generous, even coat all throughout the middle of the sign. And then I can place my fabric on top of there and pull it up to the edges as close as I can get them and spread it out nice and flat. Then I'm going to go back in with some more Mod Podge and put this all over the entire top part of the burlap fabric to keep it from fraying and to seal that fabric onto the sign. I did make sure that I let this Mod Podge dry before I moved on to the next step. I'm going to take another piece of that burlap fabric, and I'm just going to fold that in half, a nice good crease, and I'm going to set this on some wax paper because I'm going to hot glue this together and I didn't want it to stick to my table. And then on the opposite side of that, I'm going to fold it over to create almost like a hem, and then I will glue that down and make sure I get that crease nice and tight. Then on the end of this piece, because I'm going to be creating a pocket for the sign, I'm going to cut that extra pieces of burlap strands that are hanging off, and then I can fold that over and create another hem at these. This is going to become the side of the pocket. Now I did go in and make sure I cut my corners off so that when I place this on the sign, it will sit flat. Then I just held the side that I had already glued down into the frame or up to the frame so that I would be able to cut the other side down, making sure that I left enough fabric to fold over to create a hem for that side. And again, after I glue that down, I will make sure that I go back in and cut those two corners off so that they will sit very flush and flat to the sign. When I attach this piece to the sign, I don't use a whole lot of glue because you want to be able to access the center part of the pocket. So I'm only going to put glue right there at the edge of the fabric, right next to the wood pieces. And I like to do mine one side at a time so that I can make sure I place it as close to the wood edge as possible. And I'm going to use one of these metal words from Dollar Tree. Now I used this in a previous DIY, so it was already painted for me. It's painted in the Waverly white chalk paint. So I just went in and put dots of glue under each letter until I had it in place. Now I'm going to decorate mine with some lavender pick. I think this came from Walmart. I think this is super cute. You could actually use this to store mail in or put whatever greenery or florals you like in there. But I think this turned out so adorable. Let me know what you think of this project. I'm using one of these metal planter containers from Dollar Tree, as well as some jumbo craft sticks. I'm going to hold the first craft stick up to the top, and then I'll take my pencil and mark the outside edges of the pot. And then I'm going to take another craft stick and place that at the bottom and do the same thing, marking my outside edges at the bottom. Then I'm going to take a box cutter or a utility knife, and I'm going to score each of those pencil markings, my scissors, and cut those down. So I like to score these because it helps to prevent it from splitting and breaking before I cut them with the scissors. Once I have those pieces cut down, I do, again, always like to hold it up and make sure it's going to fit before I attach it to the piece. So I'm just going to attach it using some hot glue. Exact same thing at the bottom piece. So for the top, I just made sure that I pushed it right under the rim and that I had each of the outside edges flush. And then I'm going to take another craft stick and hold that up at the angle. And then I'm just eyeing this, just tracing out where the bottom part of the top stick and the top part of the bottom stick is. And then I can make my marks and cut them the same way. So I'm going to cut all of these craft sticks the exact same way by scoring them and then cutting them with my scissors. I'm going to glue that one in place. Then I'm going to take another craft stick and do the exact same thing on the opposite side of this same piece. And I did find that it was easier if I kind of held it to the side so that I could line that up and draw out my marks. Once I have this glued in place, then I'm going to take 2 more craft sticks. So you're going to need a total of 6 craft sticks for each side. To create my X, I'm going to make sure that I leave the edges in the corners. So you want those edges lined up with the corners where your other sticks meet. And then again, I'm just going to eye it and mark my angles, and then I can cut those down. So I'm going to go ahead and glue one of them in, but then I did not want them to be glued on top of each other. I wanted to cut the space out. You could glue them on top of each other because they will bend a little bit, but I wanted mine to have the cutout in the middle. So I drew the first one and made sure that it was going to line up and cut it out. And then I also went ahead and cut the other half and lined it up before I glue it down. So once you get one of them cut and you make sure that they're both going to line up, then you can glue one down, and then you can go in and glue your bottom piece and make sure that it is lined up with the top piece. I hope that makes sense, you guys. And once I have that done, I will go in and I'm going to do all 4 sides exactly just like I did the front one. This is how it looks after I've done all 4 sides. This is so cute and so farmhouse. I just love how it's turning out. And paint this with my Waverly White chalk paint. So originally I was going to paint the whole entire outside piece white. But as I was painting the wood, I loved how that metal was coming through. So then I started to make sure that I took my time. So originally I wasn't really concerned about getting the paint on the metal. But then as I saw that I was going to keep that metal, I tried to be a little bit more careful. So in order to get the paint off of the metal, I just used a Q-tip and some nail polish remover, and it took it right off. I mean, you have to scrub a little bit, but it got it right off. And I think this is so cute. I love how that metal pops out off of that white. I'm just going to take one of Dollar Tree's foam squares, place that inside, and then I'm going to decorate this with this really tall, beautiful grass bundle from Hobby Lobby. I'm also using some Dollar Tree Baby's Breath and some Spanish moss. Wrap that around the bottom part of the grass bundle. And then I'm just going to take these beautiful, well, they call them Baby's Breath, but they're cute little white flowers, and just sporadically place those around. Let me know if you would have painted it all white or if you like how that metal shows through. I'm going to be using 3 of these signs from Dollar Tree. Now, I thought they were real wood, but they're not. They're MDF. And I'm going to take one of those and I'm going to go ahead and mark my measurements. I'm going to cut these down 2 pieces to 7 inches. So I'm going to use that one sign and cut 2 7-inch pieces. The other 2 pieces are going to become the outside part of my ladder. So I'm going to cut 2 inches off of those, so both of those pieces will be 16 inches long. Now you can use a handsaw or whatever you have on hand. I'm going to go ahead and take mine outside and use my miter saw to cut these down. Now I have 2 16-inch pieces and 2 7-inch pieces. And now I am going to make my measurements for the angles. Now you can skip this part and just leave them straight, but I wanted mine to be able to lean up against the wall. So at the top left-hand corner, I'm going to measure over 1/4 inch, and then I am going to measure down 1 inch. And this is going to give me an angle so that the top part of this towel ladder will rest up against the wall. So once I have my 1 inch measurement marked off, I can take my ruler and draw a line between the 2 measurements so I will have a guide to know where to cut these off at. And then on the same side of this same sign, I'm going to go down to the bottom and create the angle for the bottom of this ladder. So I'm just going to measure up on the left-hand side 1/4 of an inch and make my mark. And then I can connect that 1/4 of an inch mark to the corner on the right-hand side and draw my line to make my guide. And you're going to want to do this exact same process for the second sign so that they will both be the same and match. So I'm just going to take these outside and cut these down. And once I have those cut down, I just like to line mine up on top of each other to make sure that all of my angles are the same and that everything looks exactly the same with those two pieces. Now I am going to drill some pilot holes, and these are going to become the outside pieces of the ladder, and the way I set mine up was so that the wording would be on the inside. So now I have flipped it over, and these are going to be the outside parts of the ladder, and I'm going to go ahead and measure where I want to drill my holes. So the first hole is going to be 3 and, well, I started off 3 1/2. I changed it to 3 3/4. So, no, it's 3 1/2. I'm sorry, you guys. It's 3 1/2 inches from the top. And then you're going to want to center that up so it's about 1 inch over. And the second measurement is 9 1/2 inches down from the top. And then again, 1 inch over to center that up. And I'm going to make that same measurement on the outside of the other piece as well. And I'm just measuring from the top down. So this is where our two pieces will hold the middle pieces of our ladder. So I wanted to find the center point on each end of the middle piece of the ladder. So these are 2 inches wide, so it's going to be 1 inch over, and then they're 1 inch thick, so it's going to be 1/2 inch. And you'll just make those center marks on each end of those two pieces. Then I took my drill with a drill bit to go ahead and just drill in these pilot holes. Now, the purpose of drilling these in is so that I can line them up with the outside pieces, but also to prevent these from splitting and cracking. Now, I did not use the right size drill bit. For the screws that I'm using, I used a smaller one. So you definitely want to make sure that you have a large enough drill bit for the screws that you're using, because if you don't, they will split, and I'll show you in just a minute what I'm talking about. So I'm going to go ahead and get those outside pieces drilled as well, and do that for both of those. And then once I have all of my pilot holes drilled, I can assemble this piece. And I'm going to be using 2-inch wood screws to put these together. So now I have these two outside pieces. I'm just going to flip them over so you're actually looking at what's going to be the front of the ladder, and then I can put my steps or pieces there in the middle. And then I'm going to take my 2-inch wood screw and go ahead and drill in that outside hole for the outside of the ladder until that point comes through, so I'll know where to line up that middle piece. And then once I line those up, I can go ahead and drill that in. And so this is where I'll show you that I didn't have a large enough drill bit, because the first piece I put in does crack and split, but it's okay. I'm still able to use it because it's still pretty secure. But just to prevent that, you want to make sure that you have a large enough drill bit so that you don't have this problem. And so see, it cracked and it split right there on the two outside edges on that side. But again, it's pretty sturdy, so I went with it and just went ahead and used it. But I did go ahead and change my drill bit out and went over all those previous holes to make them larger. Once I had those larger, I went in and added the second piece to the middle of the ladder. And this worked perfect, so this piece did not crack or split. So learn from my mistake, and then you won't have this big old crack there at the top. Then I can go ahead and add my other outside piece, doing the same thing, drilling those 2-inch screws in there. And so after I get these drilled in, if you used a large enough drill bit, you can skip the next step because hopefully you won't have any cracks or splits. But because I do have those and I wanted it to be nice and smooth and finished looking, I'm going to take some spackling and go in and fill those cracks in. And then once that spackling dries, I will go in and sand that down nice and smooth. And then it looks like it was never there. But it is pretty sturdy. I mean, you know, it's just going to hold some towels. So once I have that all sanded down, I'm going to take some apple barrel burnt umber acrylic paint, and I'm going to paint this entire piece one coat and let that dry. And then you could leave it as is, but I wanted mine to have a nice weathered wood look. So I'm going to take some water and some Waverly White chalk paint, and I'm going to mix it about a 1:1 ratio, and I'm going to mix it really good, and then I'm going to take a paintbrush and go over this piece. Now, these outside pieces had some like rough texture to them. I guess it's the type of MDF they used. So I do go in after I put my paint on there, and I'll take a lint-free cloth and wipe that down. So I did this for the entire piece, and I absolutely love how the outside edges came out because it didn't have that texture like it does here on the front. See, it just turned out very beautiful and weathered wood looking with that whitewash on it. But those front pieces had like some bubble looks to it that I wasn't too thrilled about. So I do go in with my chip brush and some more of that acrylic burnt umber paint, and I'm going to dry brush over the front and back of this piece to give it a little bit more of a wood look rather than those bubbly type look that paint formed on the MDF. So I'm just going to dry brush over that. And then before that paint dries, I'm going to take my cloth, my lint-free cloth, and just lightly go over it in one direction and kind of like smearing it in to give it some lines that look like wood. And then once you get all of this done and it is completely dry, this project is finished. And I love how it turned out. I think it's very beautiful. And it's going to look so good sitting on my kitchen counter with a tea towel on it. It's just a nice decorative piece. We're going to start off with one of Dollar Tree's Valentine signs. I'm going to remove that burlap heart and then take some sandpaper and go over that section. So again, if I had this to do over, I would remove all of the paper from that, because I really wanted to use that side so I could have those grooves in there, those indentions. I did give it a base coat of my Waverly White chalk paint, and I did paint the entire piece. So while that's drying, I'm going to use some of these larger boxes from Dollar Tree, and I'm going to use just the lids. I'm going to use 3 of those lids, as well as some jumbo craft sticks from Dollar Tree. So I'm going to take 6 of those craft sticks, line those up, and then I can set my lid on top of that and then draw my lines for each side so I will know where to cut these. I like to go in with my utility knife and score each of those lines before I go in with my scissors and cut them, because that's just going to help prevent it from splintering or splitting and cracking, and you'll get a nice even cut. Then I'm going to take some hot glue and attach all 6 of these to the top part of this lid. Now, I'm not too concerned about the design on the inside because you really won't see that. Then I'm going to take some sandpaper and go over those outside edges, and you just want to make sure that you try to keep it as flush as possible when you're adding those craft sticks to the outside edges. I'm going to do the other 2 lids exactly the same way. This is how the sign looks after I have painted it one time. I'm going to go over it with my antique wax, and I'm going to make sure that I get down in those indentions in the front. So this is what I mean when I said I wish I had removed the paper, because I'm taking my cloth and I'm going in one long stroke to create that wood grain look. And as I am doing this, the L and the V and the E are bleeding back through. So I do go in with a second coat, but you can still see it, but it's okay. I mean, Once we get this all put together, you really won't see it, but I just wish I had taken the paper off. I used the antique wax on all of those lids, and I did go in on the inside just because you'll see that inside rim some, but you won't see that design. Then I took my tape measure and I marked 2¼ inches, and then 9½ inches, and then 16¼ inches on both sides so that I would know where to place each of these trays. So I just used my ruler and lined it up where I'd already placed my markings. And then I'm going to use my E6000 and hot glue and place these trays on top of the sign in those 3 sections that I had already marked. Once I have those in place, to reinforce this, I am going to go in with my staple gun and put 2 staples in each of these to staple those trays to the sign. Once I have those in place, I am going to create a hanger for the back, and I'm going to be using some of Dollar Tree's nautical rope and some hot glue, and then I'm going to go in with just some extra ribbon that I have and put some hot glue and put that in place just to give it a little bit more security. Now, these are some of those really cute buckets from Dollar General. They have white, black, navy blue, and the silver. These are so adorable for just $1 a piece, and I love the fonts they have on them as well. Now, you could use this shelf or this hanging sign we have in your craft room and put craft supplies in it. I am going to use mine and decorate it with some florals, and I'm going to use some of the green lavender and then some of the lavender with the blooms on it, and I believe these came from Walmart. I'm going to place those in the white buckets, and then I'm going to use this white hop clover, and I'm putting that in the black bucket, and these turned out so beautiful. I absolutely love how this turned out. I think I'll create another one so I can have 2 of them and then put them on opposite sides of like a centerpiece on the wall. We're not going to be making a traditional wreath. We're going to be making more of a tabletop wreath. For the base, I'm going to be using one of these round wood plaques. I believe I picked this up at Walmart for about $1. After I remove that tag, I'm also going to be using 4 of the medium-sized beads out of this large pack that I bought from Amazon, which I will have linked in my Amazon store if you are interested. I'm going to use the beads to create feet for our base, and I am just going to attach them using some hot glue. Once I have all of those beads in place, I'm then going to take my hairdryer to go over it to make sure that I get any of those glue strands off before I go in with my Waverly White chalk paint. So this only took 1 nice thick coat, and it provided really good coverage on this light wood. I did make sure that I painted the entire piece, including the bottom. So I'm going to set that to the side and let it dry for a moment. And while that is drying, I'm going to take one of these 3D wreath forms from Dollar Tree, and they come with these little aluminum type silver pieces that you attach at the top and the bottom. So if you've never assembled these before, all you do is pull your rings around to your desired location, and then you'll take those aluminum pieces and place it on the top, and they have these little tabs where you will fold over the shorter side of the tab and then wrap the larger side around. And you'll do that for all of those wreath form pieces. Once I have all of mine in place, I do go back in with a pair of pliers and just squeeze those tabs in place to make sure that they stay. You'll also go on the opposite end and do the exact same thing, just making sure that everything lines up. Once you have all those tabs in place on the top and the bottom, and I have made sure that all of them are nice and tight and secured, I am also going to go in with a little bit of hot glue to add those underneath, just to make sure that they all stay in place and that it is very sturdy. After that glue has set up, I am then going to go in with some of Dollar Tree's nautical rope. Now, I did lay this on some wax paper just so that I wouldn't get glue everywhere. But this nautical rope will come apart in 3 strands. Well, it'll come up completely apart, but you can keep it in like 3 different strands. So I'm going to take one of those strands. I'm just going to separate it all, take the one strand out of the 3, and then I'm going to wrap this entire wreath form with this nautical rope. What I'm going to do is just start off with the hot glue and hold that end piece in place, and then I can wrap it around the 1-wire wreath form all the way down to the bottom. And once you get down to the bottom, you can just overlap it to go on the opposite side and create a nice sort of crisscross pattern at the top and the bottom. I also did make sure that I went down on my first strand. I made sure that I went down on the little metal piece that comes from the top and the bottom on the inside, and I wrapped those as well. This is how it looks after everything has been wrapped, and you can still kind of move your wreath form around just a little bit to shape it. For the base, I'm just going to hold the form on there, and I'm going to make 4 markings so that I can come in with my drill and drill holes so that I'll be able to attach this wreath form to the base. So I'm just going to set it up on some blocks of wood to make sure that I don't go through my table. And I'm just going to drill those holes, and then I'm going to come in with some 18 gauge wire. Now this wire, it's a pretty thick wire, but it's also very bendable, and you can pick this up at Hobby Lobby. And I'm just going to pull a nice strand out, feed that under the bottom, and then I can hold my wreath form on there and pull it through the wreath form, and then go to the opposite corner and pull it back through the base. So once I have the wreath form set up, I can go to the opposite corner and feed that through. And then once I get that pulled through the bottom, just make sure that you pull it really tightly once you get those through so that it'll sit nice and secure. Then I can twist those together, and then I can feed one back through another one of the holes, and then go back through the wreath form and then come back down under that opposite hole. And then once I have that one fed through, I can twist it really, really tight on the bottom and make sure that it is nice and tight and secure, and that it is going to stay on this base. So once you have all of that tightened up and twisted around, I do put some hot glue on there just to give it some added security. And I put a really good generous amount of glue and let that glue dry. And then I'm also going to go on the top part where the wreath form meets the base, and I did put a little bit of glue under there. So to decorate this, I am using some eucalyptus from Walmart and some baby's breath from Walmart. I will also be using these beautiful purple and white dahlias and some really beautiful purple, they almost look like daisies, from Dollar Tree. And some floral wire to attach them. So I just cut my eucalyptus off of the bundle, and it's going to give me 4 nice strands. I'm going to take my floral wire and attach the bottom part of the eucalyptus to the bottom part of the wreath form. And once I get that twisted around there nice and tight, I'm going to cut that excess off, and then I'll take my pliers and push that down into the nautical rope so it doesn't poke your fingers or anything. And then I just did the same thing at the very top to attach that eucalyptus. I just skipped every other one, so you're going to have the greenery on every other wreath form. And then I'm going to go in with these beautiful dahlias, the purple and white, and if I'm saying that wrong, please let me know. I am going to hot glue these to the base, so right at the bottom of the wreath form onto the base, and I'm going to go around and do that on every other piece until I get it nice and full in the way I like for it to look. Then I put the last one on the very top that has that metal piece poking up through the bottom. And I'll just set that and attach that in there. And then once that glue sets up, I'm going to come in with some of the extra eucalyptus leaves that came off that last little branch. And I am just taking 2 leaves apiece and gluing that down right underneath that wire wreath form. Then I'm going to take the baby's breath and cut each of those branches off and then attach them together to make a nice long strand of baby's breath. And I use about 3 of those, and then I'm going to attach those to the wreath form on the opposite pieces from where the greenery is. Then I'm going to take those beautiful purple daisies and glue those down in between the greenery pieces at the bottom of the base, and then I'll go all the way around and attach that. And then to give it something a little extra at the top, I'm going to take this decorative ball that's made of like branches. I've had this for a long time. I believe it came from Target. And I'm going to take one of those 3rd strands that come apart from the nautical rope, and I'm just going to pull one of those strands out. Feed that through the top part of my decorative ball, tie a knot, and then I can tie that to that metal piece that we've wrapped with the nautical rope at the top. I'm just going to hold that, and that little metal piece hangs down from the top part of the wreath. I'm just going to hold that up to see how far I want it to hang down, and then I'm going to glue that to the top part and wrap that around so that it'll have this really cute twine decorative ball hanging from the center of the wreath. You're just going to want to hold that in place until that glue sets up. And then I'm also going to be creating a bow using some buffalo check ribbon that I have. I believe this came from Hobby Lobby. Yes, sorry. I couldn't remember if I used the Dollar Tree or if I used the Hobby Lobby ribbon. So I am just going to hold it up to see about how large I want my loops to be. And I'm going to cut down 2 strands or 2 lengths of ribbon the same size, and then 2 that are slightly shorter than that. And I'm going to create my loops at the top part, and I don't remember exactly like how far or how long the loops are, but I'm going to take the long one and then I'll put a short one on top of it, and then I will flip it over so that the fabric color is the same on each side, and I'll put the short one and then the long one on the bottom. And then I decided that I wanted a few more loops, so I created a couple of more about the same size as the 2 shorter ones. So it'll be 4 shorter ones and 2 longer ones. And guys, I'm sorry, it's a little bit off frame, and I hope I'm making sense. But I'm just going to pinch it right there underneath the loops, take some of my floral wire and twist that around underneath the loops. I'll cut that excess off that's sticking out from the bottom of the loops, but I'm going to leave the 2 longer ones and then 2 of the shorter ones for tails, and I did dovetail the ends of those. I took the extra floral wire and attached that to the top part of the wreath form, and then you're just going to want to fluff that bow out until it's nice and fluffy and pretty, and then you can shape your tails just by curling them around. And this is how it turned out. I think this is so beautiful. I will be using this 4x4 picture frame from Dollar Tree, and I'm actually going to use 2 of these for this project. Now, what I love about this frame is it has these tabs on the back that you can just push out, and then the back itself fits down into the insert of the front of the frame. You're just going to remove the glass and set that to the side because we're not going to need that for this project. Now I'm going to set my frames aside for just a minute because I'm going to be using some of these medium-sized craft sticks, and you're going to need 2 sets of 6. For the first frame, I'm going to take those 6 craft sticks and I'm going to create a basket pattern on top of this. This is the top part of the frame where I'm setting these 3 sticks down. Now it's going to look a little off at first, but you will be able to straighten everything out and it will fit pretty snug. So the first piece I am doing like an over, under, over pattern. And then the next craft stick, I will do opposite of that. So it will be like an over, under, over pattern. And then the outside stick will be just like the first stick that we put in there. Now I opted not to use any glue because once you get these pieces together and you move them around, it does fit pretty snug. You're still able to move them a little bit, but I'm not too concerned about them coming apart or coming out of the frame once I put the back on there. Once you have all your sticks lined up, then you can straighten everything up so that those 4 squares in the middle will have just about, they'll be almost the same size. And then you can set that back in your frame and make sure that those 3 other sticks at the ends all line up. So when you set this down, the rounded edges you won't be able to see as much, but the back of the frame will actually be able to sit down between the crafter sticks and the top part of the frame. And I'll show you that in just a minute. When you put that in, it'll just snap in between those sticks and the top part of the frame, and then you can close the tabs in. Now you're still able to move those sticks around if you need to adjust them or straighten them out. Once I have all those tabs in, I do go in and straighten everything up and make sure that you can't see the rounded edges. That make sure I slide those down into the groove of the frame and straighten everything up. And I'm going to do the exact same thing for the other 6 craft sticks and the other frame. And then I just held one in front of the other to make sure that all the sticks lined up and they looked exactly alike. Now I'm going to take some Waverly White chalk paint and I'm going to give these 2 coats. So I was kind of making this up as I went along. It would probably have been easier if I painted all these pieces before I put it together, but I didn't know exactly what I was doing when I sat down. So I just painted them after I had them all together. Now I'm going to attach these 2 together using some hot glue, and I'm going to attach one about halfway down the side of the other, making sure that I keep those craft sticks lined up so it looks like 2 continuous pieces going across. And it's going to be a little bit flimsy, so you'll flip it over and add a little bit more hot glue to the back. Now as you can see here, I did not pay attention to where the hanger was. The hanger on the bottom should actually be on the left-hand side so that both of those will be at the top of the piece, but that's okay. Just if you recreate this, you might want to make sure you keep those hangers on the same side. I'm decorating it with some purple flowers from Dollar Tree and some greenery. I think this came from Walmart. And I'm just going to cut a couple of stems off because I didn't want too much. I still want to be able to see that basket weave pattern in the frame. And then I just played around with the placement of the flowers and the greenery until I got it exactly where I wanted it to be. And once I have that in place, I'm just going to take those back out and then glue the stem of the flower to the stem of the greenery so that they will stay together. And I'll do that for both of those. And then I could put them back inside of the frame and then glue them on the back side so that those flowers will stay in place. And I'm going to glue it on the back side of the craft stick so you will not see the bottom part of those stems from the front. And I just put a nice good amount of hot glue on the bottom, and then I went back in and added some more glue on top of that stem just to make sure those flowers don't come off. Then I'm going to take those branches, the little greenery pieces and the flowers, and fluff them out and spread them out and make them nice and pretty. And I absolutely love how this turned out. I love that pop of purple color on here. I think these are absolutely adorable. This home sign from Dollar Tree. Now, if you can find the wording without this bottom plate on there, would be perfect because it was really glued in there. I had the most difficult time trying to get it out. I used my box cutter to kind of score the outside edges and then kind of bend it back and forth until I was able to pop it out of that bottom wood piece. And I did mess up the metal a little bit, so I used my hammer to kind of flatten those spots back out. And then some of the cardboard on the back came up, so I just used a little bit of hot glue to glue those pieces back down and just tried to straighten it out as much as possible. But this is a super cute sign. We're going to set that piece to the side for a minute and use this charger plate from Dollar Tree that has this gorgeous wood grain in it. And I am using Waverly's white chalk paint. I gave this one good coat and then I went over and touched it up in a few spots where some of the color from underneath was bleeding through. Now, look, you can still see that gorgeous wood grain through it. I am going to use some of this burlap fabric. This came from burlapfabric.com. I will leave their website link in my description box below if you are interested. I am just going to wrap the center portion of this plate around with this fabric, and I'm using some hot glue to hold that in place. And I'm trying to make sure that I keep it fairly tight. When I get to the front part of the plate, because it has those indentions, I'm going to put just a little bit of hot glue to kind of hold that fabric in place and kind of form it more to the plate than just going straight across. And I'll do the exact same thing on the other side and attach it again in the back using the hot glue and just making sure I pull it tight and keep it nice and secure. Then I'm going to take some buffalo check ribbon. This came from Dollar Tree, and it's pretty wide. So I'm going to do the exact same thing, attaching this to the center of the burlap ribbon and just making sure that I try to keep that as tight as possible and wrap it around those outside edges. Now, I did leave the ends of the buffalo check ribbon open a little bit because I'm going to create a hanger to go on the back of this using some nautical rope from Dollar Tree. And then I can actually glue that under the ribbon, and that ribbon can give it a little bit more security and hold that hanger in place. And I did use a very good amount of glue, and I did the exact same thing on the other side. Now I created my hanger where you would not see it when you hang it up, so I made it a little bit shorter. Now I can place my home sign right to the right side of the plate because we're going to add some florals to the left side. And I'm doing that with some hot glue and just holding that in place. The florals that I'm using are 2 bundles of the lavender picks from Walmart. I believe they're like 97 or 98 cents a piece. And I'm going to cut those down to the top line right there below the florals so that I can attach these two together. And I'm going to attach them end to end, and then I'm going to bend them a little bit to create a curve so that they'll go around the plate, and then I can attach the two where the ends meet with a zip tie. So I'm just going to overlap those stems right there where the florals are and attach it with a zip tie and do the exact same thing on the other side so that it will hold this together. Then I can cut that extra zip tie off, and I'm going to take a piece of the buffalo check ribbon and kind of roll that up or fold that up into thirds so that I can place this over top of the center portion of the florals. This is going to not only cover up those zip ties, but it's also going to give us a place to be able to glue some more florals to right there in the center. And I'm using these beautiful purple plumeras from Dollar Tree, and I'm going to cut those, just the top part of the flowers off. Some of them I did leave a little bit of the stem in so that I can hot glue those in between the stems on the lavender pieces. And then some of them I cut directly below the flower so that I could place those more so on the ribbon. And then I'm just going to hot glue these in until I get it nice and full and the look that I'm going for. And I think this is so pretty. This plate is turning out so gorgeous. And I think I used maybe seven or eight, I can't remember, of the plumeras. And then I'm going to take some of the white baby's breath from Dollar Tree, the flower portions, and cut those stems off and then hot glue those in place so it just has this little pop of white coming out of all of these little plumera flowers. And I'm just going to place those wherever I think they look good and just hot glue those down in between those plumera and the lavender so that they kind of flow outside of the center part of this floral arrangement on the side. And once I have those in place, this project is finished, and I think it turned out absolutely gorgeous. I love how this project turned out, and I hope you guys like it too. Let me know what you think. Using 4 of these wooden pallets from Dollar Tree, go ahead and remove all of the label stickers from the back. And I'm going to use some hot glue to attach 2 of these pieces side by side. You just want to make sure that they are evenly placed at the top and the bottom. And then I'm going to flip that over and add a little bit of hot glue to the seam where the 2 pieces meet, just for some added stability. Taking one of the other wood pallets, I'm going to attach it to the back part of one of those pallets, just putting some hot glue on the wood part itself right there on those ends, trying not to get too much extra glue so that it won't interfere if you stain or paint it. Then I can take that last pallet and put hot glue on the sides of the pallet that are already there in the bottom, so that I can put this together and make sure everything is nice and straight and pretty much square. So now you have your back and bottom of your chair, and I'm going to take 4 of the tumbling tower pieces, and I'm going to take one of those and glue it to the center of the right-hand side of that wood pallet. And then I can take another one and place it in the exact same position on the other side. And then I'll take one of those tumbling tower pieces and put a little bit of glue on the bottom to add it to the center of the front part of the seat. So we're creating somewhere for us to put the arm rails for our chairs. And you'll put the last one on the opposite side in the exact same place right there in the center of that pallet. Using 2 of the jumbo popsicle sticks, or you can use stir sticks, whatever you have on hand, but these are the jumbo size. I just held that up and using my miter shears, cut it off where it needed to be cut for the right length, and made 2 of those the same length, but I kept the rounded end so that when I place that on there, it will look like a cute armrest with that cute rounded end on it. And I'm just attaching these on top of those tumbling tower pieces with some hot glue. Using 4 of these mini cordial glasses, these are plastic glasses that I found at Dollar Tree. They had 10 for $1. So I'm using 4 of those, and I am tracing the top part of the glass onto some foam board and cutting that out with my scissors. I went ahead and removed the paper part of the foam board so it doesn't peel up later. And I cut 4 of these out for the 4 glasses and attached these to the top of these plastic cups or glasses with some hot glue. Once I have all those in place, I'm going to take some sandpaper and sand that foam board down nice and smooth so it has a really smooth edge. And this is going to give us a nice flat top to be able to attach this to the bottom of the chair for the legs. So just flip your chair over and you'll see those slats at the bottom. So the back side of the chair, I'm just going to hold that up and make a marking so I'll know where to place my glue. And on the back side, you can add this to the 2 bottom slats where the backing comes down, and then that one bottom slat there. And I'll repeat that on the other side. But the 2 legs for the front, you're only going to have that 1 piece of wood to glue it to. So I kind of tried to center that up to be able to get as much glue on there as possible to make it nice and sturdy. Once I have all 4 legs in place, I did make sure I wiped this down with a paper towel to make sure I got all those glue strands off before I took it outside, and I gave this 2 coats of my Krylon Fusion all-in-one spray paint in the color matte white. And I do have this in my Amazon store if you are interested. After I painted it, I did not like the way the foam board was showing through. So I'm going to take some of those jumbo craft sticks and cut those down to be able to glue it so it has more of a finished look around the front and those side edges. And because these craft sticks were not long enough to go all the way across the front, I just opted to go ahead and cut them where they would meet in the middle. And then I can glue those to those slats on the pallet in the front, but they are long enough to go on each side to be able to just use one piece. And I'll glue that the same way on the right hand and left hand side. Once I have all those in place, I can take my white chalk paint, because I didn't want to take that back out and spray paint it again. I'm just going to take my Waverly white chalk paint and paint those wood pieces on the front and the back side. So I did originally spray paint it just so it could get into all those nooks and crannies in that palette. But the white paint matches perfectly with the spray paint. I am going to distress this piece. Again, if you don't like distressing, you can skip on to the next part, but I'm going to use my gray chalk paint and really heavily distress over this entire piece to give it the really cute farmhouse feel. And I did also make sure that I went over the legs on the back sides where you could see it. And this is how it turned out after I distressed all of it. And I think this is so cute. So one way you could decorate this is to put a cute potted plant, so it could be a cute little plant holder for you. But I'm going to decorate mine with this really cute milk creamer that I found at Dollar General for $3. And I love the color of it. I love the shape of it. I'm just going to pop a couple of baby's breath in there and set that right in the center. And now you have this gorgeous farmhouse decor piece. I love how this little creamer, the color of that really pops off of this distressed farmhouse chair. Let me know, you guys, what you think of this project. I'm going to be using this sign that I picked up at the Dollar Tree. And I'm also going to be using a wooden dowel and these really cute fat bluebirds. I picked up 2 of these. They're $1 a piece at Dollar General. And I wanted 2 that looked different. I didn't want them to look exactly the same. So one's looking one way and the other one's looking straight. But I popped the top piece off and I was pleasantly surprised that there was a heart-shaped piece of wood under there. However, it was glued down very well. And it caused a little hole in the bottom of the sign, but no problem. I just put some wood filler in there, fill that in, and I'm going to let that set up completely, and then I'll sand that down to a nice smooth finish. So while that's setting up and drying, I'm going to take the same chalky paint that I used in DIY number 1, and I'm going to give these little birds a coat of paint. Now, my original thought process was I wanted to leave the little eyes, the beaks, and the feet black, and that's why I was being a little bit meticulous about how I was painting it. But then in mid-crafting, I decided I wanted to paint it all white because I wanted the whole project to be white, and I thought it would just give it a very nice, elegant feel to it, a real nice farmhouse feel. I think it turned out great, but I think it would have looked great either way. So now that the wood filler has dried and I've sanded it to a smooth finish, I take the same chalk paint and give it about 2 coats of paint to make sure I have good coverage on there and that none of the little lines in the bottom are showing, because I want to make sure it was solid white. I also paint my dowel, and here you see me using my hair dryer, just trying to speed up the process a little bit so I can put those second and third coats on. Once that has completely dried, I'm going to take the dowel and my little rusty, you guys, I'm sorry, this thing's so old, my handsaw, and I'm not cutting that dowel in half. One of the sides is smaller than the other. I wanted it to be shorter than the other. And I make sure I sand it down to a flat, smooth finish because I really need those to be flat for the next part of this process. I'm going to be using my hot glue gun and glue I'm going to start off with the smaller, shorter dowel and glue that to the middle bottom of the bird. And I'm going to let that set for just a minute, let that hot glue set up, and then I'm going to take a bead of hot glue and go around the dowel and the bird just to give it a little extra stability. So originally I just wanted to glue these down in the tray, and that would work. but it was not as stable as I wanted it to be. I didn't want them to be like jiggling around when you move it. So I do pull out some wooden cubes that you can pick up at the Dollar Tree. Super easy fix, and I actually like the way it turned out better with the cubes. So here, this is where I was saying I was just going to put the bird down, and it does set up, but it just kind of moved a little more than I wanted it to. Just take these little wooden block or little wooden cubes, and I'm going to glue it to the bottom, and then I'm going to glue it to the side of the dowel as well. So to the bottom of the tray and the side of the dowel, and one on each side, and it just gives it a lot more stability, and you'll be able to see that better on the second bird when I glue that down. And then I'm just going to come in after those set up a little bit, and I will paint these little cubes white just to blend them in better. And they're looking so cute. I didn't want them facing the same way. I wanted them to be facing a little differently because I think that just looks so adorable. I just put one coat because I'm actually going to be covering it up, but just in case you could see it, I didn't want you to see the wood. I wanted it to be all white. And I'm just going to pop the little pieces off of the end. And then I'm going, of course, after all of this dries, I'm going to be gluing those to the cubes and to the dowel around each of the birds. And so that's why the cubes came in really handy. It actually worked out better in my favor that I used those, because I could glue the greenery around and glue it to those little cubes, and just I actually had no rhyme or reason as to where I put them. I just put them where I thought they looked good and filled it in around each of the birds. And I love how this green is popping out on this white. It is so pretty. So for this project, we're going to be using this cute little plastic, I'm going to call it a laundry basket, that I picked up at the Dollar Tree. Hot glue gun, some hot glue sticks, a white cotton clothesline that I picked up at Walmart. I believe it was about $4.97 for a 100-foot roll, and this microfiber mop head that I picked up at Dollar Tree. I am going to begin by hot gluing the first strand around the bottom, and I do hot glue that entire strand because I don't want the rope to move up and down. After I glue that first strand all the way down, I just roll it out and glue as necessary just to make sure it stays in place. And I'm trying to actually keep the glue like maybe one on each side just so it doesn't slide up and down. And I'm going to do that about a third of the way up the laundry basket. So once I get about a third of the way up, I am going to cut the end off, hot glue that down, and then take my mop head apart. You just actually slide it out of that little centerpiece, and then it has a little piece tied together that you just cut off. And I'm going to repeat the same process with this, hot gluing that first strand down. I do take my time because I wanted to make sure all of the gray was on the bottom and all the white was on the top. So this part of the project actually took the longest out of the entire project, just because I wanted to make sure everything was symmetrical. I wanted it to look like a beautiful little elegant stripe going down the middle. So we're going to do this 2/3 of the way up. Then I also go around the top, again using the hot glue all the way around at the beginning and then at the end. And you'll have to let me know, would you have used gray and white, or, I think twine in the middle or some sizzle rope would be really pretty. But I'm just going to go all the way around, get to the top, and I do make sure I use my glue all the way around that top rim to make sure it gets a nice secure fit so they don't slide around. Once I get to the end, I am going to take the mop head and hot glue a little strand and then just feed that through, twirling it around the handle until I get all the way to the other side. And then I'm going to hot glue that piece down and just go back and kind of fluff that up just to make sure, I like the way the handle is looking, make sure I have enough rope on there. I don't want too little and the little handle sticking out. And I'm going to do that for both sides of the handles on this little laundry basket. We're going to start off with 3 of these wooden drawers, and I'm going to remove the drawer inserts, and I'm going to be using some of these 1-gallon paint stir sticks. Now you can pick these up, no, they're quart paint stir sticks, I'm sorry. You can pick these up at Lowe's and you get 30 in a pack for $1, and they're nice and wide and they have a really beautiful wood grain look to it. I'm just going to hold the front part of the drawer that has that heart on there, line it up with 3 of those sticks, mark them with my pencil, then I'm going to score them with my utility knife. Then I will go in and cut those with my scissors. So once you score it with your utility knife, it really keeps it from splintering when you cut it with the scissors. Then I'm just going to make sure that they will line up and that they're even on the front part of the drawer. Then I'll sand each one of those pieces down, and then again make sure that they line up and that the drawer will be able to open and close properly, and that I don't have a lot of edging hanging over. I'm going to use my antique wax again on each of these pieces, making sure that I get all of the outside edges as well as the front of the piece. And then I'll wipe most of that off with my cloth. I'm also going to make sure that I use this same technique on the front of the drawers, because if there's a little bit of a gap between those slats with the craft sticks, you wouldn't see that light colored wood, you would see the dark wood. Then I'll set those to the side after I do all 3 of those and let those dry. After it has dried, I'm going to take my Gorilla Wood Glue and apply those 3 craft sticks to the front of the drawer. Make sure everything is lined up, and then I'll set those to the side and let that wood glue dry before handling the drawer anymore. Once I have all of those in place, I am then going to take the 3 outside boxes that the drawers came in, and I am going to glue these 3 together using wood glue and hot glue. So the wood glue is going to give it that permanent hold, and the hot glue is going to give it that temporary hold. Once I get these 3 pieces together, I'm also going to use 2 of these wooden crates from Dollar Tree, and these have the indentations on the front and the back. So I'm just going to line these up and I'm going to glue them end to end, again using my Gorilla Wood Glue and my hot glue. And now the front parts for the openings for those drawers, as well as the openings for the crates, are all going to be facing towards you. And then you can glue those 3 drawers right on the center top of the 2 crates. Now I made sure that it was flush in the front, and you will have a little bit of it overhanging on the back. I'm using one of Dollar Tree's beautiful wood signs. I love the design on this. And after I remove the hanger, I'm just going to line those 2 side pieces up to the back part of those 3 drawers. And I'll apply that again with my wood glue and hot glue. And just lining those up with the top edge of those 3 drawer pieces, and then hold that in place until your glue sets up. Now I like a finished look, so I'm going to be filling in all of these cracks with some spackling. You can use caulk, wood putty. You don't have to fill them in at all, but I just like to have a nice smooth finished look rather than having these seams or gaps there. So once I apply all of this to all of the areas that I want to seal, I am also going to take some of these wooden beads. Now I got these from Amazon. They came in a huge pack with like 980 pieces, and I want to say it was like $15 or $16, which I think is a really good deal. And I'll have that linked in my Amazon store if I can. I am also going to take my spackling and fill in one of the holes on each of these wood beads to make sure that they're nice and smooth. Once my spackling has dried, I'm going to go over it with one of Dollar Tree's sanding blocks and sand everything down nice and smooth, and I also made sure that I sanded those beads. Then I'm going to go in with a cloth and make sure that I wipe any of the dust from sanding off of all of the entire pieces. And I'm going to take my Waverly White chalk paint, and I'm going to give these 2 coats. And I did make sure that I painted this entire piece. the inside part of these drawers, as well as the back part and also the bottom. Now, once you put your drawers in, we can then take our beads and apply those to the front parts of the drawers to become the handles. And I'm going to attach these with some Gorilla Wood glue. Now, I am going to hold that in place for just a few seconds after I line it up and press it firmly. And then you don't want to handle it until that glue sets up. I didn't use hot glue because there wasn't quite enough room on the bead for the wood glue and the hot glue. So you just want to make sure that it dries completely before you handle it. Then I'm going to take some of that same scrapbook paper that I used in the previous DIY, and this came out of one of these beautiful books that I picked up on sale from Hobby Lobby. And then I measured the inside part of the two bottom parts of the crates. And then I'm just going to use my Cricut cutter to cut those out and make sure that my design is lining up. Again, I always like to make sure that it's going to fit in there before I attach it with any kind of glue. I'm going to use the same matte Mod Podge, apply that to the back of those two bottom crates, and then I can place my paper in there. I'll do the other side the exact same way, and once I have that second piece of paper in there, I can go in and add my Mod Podge to the front to seal those in. I think this paper is so beautiful, and I am loving this white and wood and this gorgeous pattern that I went ahead and decided to add this to the top part of this piece as well. So I just cut a piece that was slightly larger than the top part of this. We'll call it a shelf now. I'll apply my paper on there, and then I'm just going to cut it as close as I can to the edge, and then I'm going to go over that with the Mod Podge on the front again to seal that in, and then I'll just set it to the side and make sure that my Mod Podge has dried before I go in and sand any of that excess off. So I just took a sanding block and went in one direction and went around the entire top part of this piece until I had it sanded down nice and smooth. And then I can reinsert my drawers, and this shelf is finished. This is so cute. This would look so beautiful in a bathroom to hold, you know, cotton balls, your fingernail clippers, your tweezers. You could use it as a decor piece. It's really gorgeous. I love how this one turned out. Using this faux book stack from Dollar Tree in the Valentine's Decor, I'm going to remove the ribbon but set it to the side because I will reuse it. And I'm going to give this 2 coats of Folk Arts white chalk paint in the color Adirondack. On the end pieces, I'm going to add it a little bit thicker to give it some texture so that it will look like real ends of a book. After the white chalk paint dries, I'm going to take Waverly's chalk paint in the color Celery. This is a beautiful green. I just love this color. I'm going to paint the front of the book stack, the top and the bottom sections, as well as the entire top part of this faux book stack. This will end up taking 2 coats to get a really beautiful finish. On the ends of each side, I'm taking a detailed brush and going in between the grooves to really make it look like 3 separate books. And then on the very end, closest to the front of the book stack, I'm going to round those edges off and try to make it as straight as possible on those grooves. But this is really going to make it look like real true bookends and not just straight across stacks like it does in the front. This is how it looks after the second coat. And see how it really looks like a true book on each end? Loving how this is turning out. So for the centerpiece, I wanted a pastel yellow. So I took white chalk paint and then Folk Arts paint in the color Lemon Yellow. I put one tiny little dot in there, mixed it up really well, and then I'm just going to paint that center section just like I did the tops and bottoms. And if you make a mistake, just let the paint dry. You can go back and clean that up. I'm also going to round the ends off and paint down beside my green line so that it will look like 3 separate books. I did this on both ends, and this is how it's looking so far. Now you can leave it just like this, but I wanted to distress mine just a little bit, so I'm going to take some of that white chalk paint on a dry brush and wipe most of it off, then dry brush distressing all over it, including the top and both of the ends. Once that dries, I have created a decal using my Cricut, and I know not everybody has a Cricut, so I have this as a free printable on my website, which is in my description box below. If you'd like to go over to my website, download that, print it out, and then trace it onto your project. If you do have a Cricut, I used the fonts Eve Adam for Hello and Dom Casual Standard Regular for Spring. And I thought this just turned out so pretty. I absolutely love these fonts. Once I have that in place, I decided to go ahead and dry brush over the decal to blend it in with my book stack. And then I can reattach the bow and ribbon. And I'm just going to line it up nice and straight. And it is larger than the book stack. That's why it slid off so easily. So I'm going to pull it really tight on the bottom and then hot glue that in place. Now I'm using one of these wood cutouts. This came from Hobby Lobby. They have 54 pieces for $3.99. It's in the spring shop and it has some of the cutest spring wood cutouts. I chose the bird for this project and I'm using a wet baby wipe and Waverly's Antique Wax to go over this, and then I'll unfold the baby wipe, just place the wood cutout in the middle and wipe most of that off because I wanted it to be a really light wood color. After it dries, I'm going to hot glue that right underneath the bow. And then to decorate the top of this, I'm using one of Dollar Tree's watering cans. It had a stake on the bottom, so I've already pulled that off. And then I can set this on the top of the book stack and put some florals in it. And I absolutely love how this project turned out. I love how the ends of this project look like true book ends. And I am really loving that cute wood bird. I'm using 3 of these house-shaped decor pieces from Dollar General for $1 a piece. I'm going to remove the labels from the back. And the pink one, I'm going to give this 2 coats of the white chalk paint with a detailed angled brush, just being very careful because I don't want to paint the roof. I want it to stay that natural brown wood color. And I'm also painting the sides of this one as well as that little piece on the back so it'll look nice and finished on each side. Because I am going to be covering this up, but I did not want that pink to bleed through my scrapbook paper. So that's why I'm applying 2 coats to make sure that I can cover that pink up. For the other 2 pieces, I'm going to give those 3 coats of the Waverly chalk paint in the color Celery, again being very careful not to paint the roof. And I did not paint the sides of this because I wanted it to have the same natural wood color as the roof for this one. Again, it did take 3 coats of that Celery chalk paint. For the White House, I'm going to be covering it in this gorgeous, beautiful scrapbook paper from Hobby Lobby. It's 69¢, but I believe sometimes you can catch it on sale. So I lined up which bunny design I wanted for the front of the house, held it in place, and then traced over that. Then I went to the very top point of the house so that I could cut that out. So I have the 3 sides lined up and then just went to that top point of the house so I could hold that in place once I had it cut down, and then use my fingernail to kind of make indentions of where the roof line is so that I would know where to cut that. So I just pressed real firmly, got those indentions in place, and then trimmed off whatever I needed to trim off. Made sure that it's going to fit properly before I am attaching this with some Mod Podge, and you just put a nice even coat over that. Then lay your scrapbook paper down and press it nice and firmly and make sure that your edges are staying in place. And this is so pretty. I love this bunny. I'm using some of those same wood cutouts from Hobby Lobby, but you could also use the wood cutouts from Dollar Tree. They have some of these beautiful roses for the Valentine's decor that they have out right now. I'm going to use the same Waverly Antique Wax and a baby wipe to really give that a nice beautiful wood finish that matches the roof and the sides. And once that dries, I'm going to attach one to each of the greenhouses. So you could pick out whichever design you want or place it however you want on your house. I think these turned out so beautiful. I love this so much. It looks so high end. Look how gorgeous this Fresh Flower Market sign is from Dollar Tree, but we are going to spruce it up just a little bit. I am using my staple lifter. I have this listed in my Amazon store if you're interested. It comes in so handy to remove those staples. And I am using some scrap wood that I had in my shop. It measures about 1 inch wide and it's about a 1/2 inch thick. So I held it up to the sign to see how long I needed to cut those sides. And then I used my handheld miter saw box to cut those down. And then I'm going to hold them in place so that I can take the longer pieces and determine where I need to mark to cut those down. And I'll use that same handheld saw to cut those 2 pieces. And I'm just using the first one as a guide to mark the second one. So the 2 longest pieces ended up being about 11 3/4 of an inch long. The 2 shorter pieces were 3 3/4 of an inch long. And then I'm going to sand down all of those ends that I just cut and go over each piece of this wood to make sure they're nice and smooth. Then I'm going to use a square so that I can make sure everything is straight and lined up. And I'm going to use some Gorilla Wood glue to be able to glue my pieces together. So I'm going to put some on the long end and then push that up to the short end. Hold it in place and try to make sure it is as straight as possible. Then I can put some glue on the other piece and slide that up. And then I'll slide my square up to make sure everything is nice and straight and square. Then I can add that 4th piece by putting some glue on those 2 ends. And then sliding that in between the 2 long pieces. Then I'm going to take the sign and push it down just to make sure that it's going to fit before I put my clamps on here. And I want to squeeze that really tightly to make sure that everything's pressed together and that that glue will adhere well. Then I'm going to pop the sign out so that I can let that glue set up. And I'm going to take 6 of the tumbling tower pieces and apply glue to 2 sides of that so I can push 1 in each corner. This is going to provide a base for the sign to sit on and is also going to provide some extra support for all of our corners and seams where we attach them together. So I allowed that glue to dry. I also removed any excess before it dried with a paper towel, and I allowed it to dry for about an hour before removing the clamps. Then on the back side, I took some sandpaper to make sure I sand down any glue before I stained this. I'm actually using Waverly's Antique Wax, applying it with a brush, and then I'll take a wet baby wipe, blend it all in, remove the excess, and I'm going to do this over the entire piece, including those tumbling tower pieces, because I know that you will be able to see it from the back and I want it to look nice and finished. Once the wax has dried, I'm going to take some hot glue and apply it to each one of those tumbling tower pieces and then firmly press the sign down into the frame and make sure that that hot glue adheres to it. And this project was super easy, but I think it turned out so pretty. I am using one of Dollar Tree's 14-inch wire wreath forms, as well as some burlap ribbon. I think this ribbon came from Dollar General. I'm going to flip it over to the back side, use hot glue so that I can hot glue the ribbon to itself, and I'm using that little spatula tool to keep from burning myself. Let that glue cool so you have a nice strong hold, and then I'm going to start wrapping it around the first part that I looped around about halfway. Line it up and get a good tight pull on this as you are wrapping it around the wreath form. We're going to do this for the entire wreath form. If you run out of ribbon like I did, just glue it to itself just like you did in the beginning on the back side of the wreath form. Cut the excess off and then start your new roll where you cut your first roll off at. And you want to do this on the back side so that you won't be able to see this when you hang your wreath up. Once I have everything nice and wrapped and the glue has cooled, now I can attach my florals. I am using this beautiful wisteria from Walmart. These are about $6 for one bundle. I'm using 2 bundles. Now I know that Dollar Tree sells wisteria, but it only has like one long stem on it, so it would take several of those to make this wreath. I cut all of the greenery off, and then I'm applying the stem into the burlap and attaching it with some hot glue, and then taking hot glue and gluing the very end leaf piece down, but allowing the other pieces of the greenery to flow. I'm going to continue to do that around the entire outside of the wreath form, and then come back in with the other greenery on the other bundle, and then kind of fill it in on the inside of the wreath form until I get all the way around and it's really pretty and full. Then I can start attaching the flowers. So I'm cutting off each of the stems. So I started off with the 2 largest stems from each bundle so that I can attach the stem inside the burlap. I'll use a little bit of hot glue. Then I'm going to use some floral wire to attach the middle and then the end piece. So I did the 2 longest ones opposite of each other so they'd be nice and full on opposite sides of the wreath. So I'm tucking that end piece into the burlap. I'm hot gluing it. Then I'll take a piece of floral wire after I pull the greenery up in between the flowers to get it nice and full. I'll take that floral wire and bend it over so it creates a loop on one end, and then feed that down in between the stem of the florals through the burlap, and then pull both of those pieces to the back side, and then I'll twist it really tightly, cut off the excess floral wire, and then I'm going to tuck that down very carefully so you don't poke yourself into the burlap so it does not scratch your door or surface or wherever you're going to hang it from. Then I can repeat that on the end piece of that long one, and then I can take these shorter stems and continue to go around and fill this wreath in, repeating that same process with the hot glue and the floral wire. And as I'm going, I make sure that I am pulling that greenery up in between the white flowers so everything blends in really nicely. You'll continue to do that until it's nice and full and fluff everything out. And then this wreath is finished, and I love how it turned out. It is so pretty. It just screams spring to me. I am using 4 of these wood and metal corrugated frames from Dollar Tree. I'm going to remove the piece on the back that holds the frame up, including that metal portion. They pull off really easily, as well as all of the stickers. I'm going to remove that from all 4. And on the front, the clip is held by a tiny little screw. I'm going to remove those clips. And originally, I was going to fill that hole in with some caulking and then touch up the paint, but then I decided to just put those tiny screws right back in the hole, and it is barely noticeable. I also think it gives it just a little bit more charm. Now I'm going to be attaching these frames together to create a box. So I'm going to take the first frame and I'm going to add that second frame to the outside edge. I am using Gorilla Glue as well as some hot glue. Now the hot glue is just going to hold it in place temporarily till that Gorilla Glue sets up. I'm going to attach it to the outside part of the frame, and I'm going to hold it as straight as I can until that hot glue cools. So this is how it's going to look for the first 2 pieces together. And then I'll take the other frame and I'm going to attach it the exact same way as the other side is. So on the bottom part of this, I'm going to add some more Gorilla Glue and hot glue. And again, it does just take a minute to hold it in place to try to keep it as straight as possible because these frames are not perfectly straight. Some of them are a little bit bowed, but that's okay. I think, again, it gives it more character. Now, this is how it's going to look. One side you're going to have a full frame, and then on the other sides you'll have a frame, and then you'll be able to see the outside edging of the end frames, and you'll see what I'm talking about in just a minute. So I'm going to place that fourth one right in place, hold it till the glue sets. So this is how it's going to look. So one side you'll have those two outside edges for the frames, and then on the ends it's just going to look like one full frame. And this was already the color I like, so I didn't have to paint anything. I'm going to create a bottom using one of these backings off of a Dollar Tree sign where I used the frame but I didn't use the back. I'm going to hold my crate on top of this and then just use a pencil to trace out the inside portion so I'll know how big I need to cut the part to fit inside of the crate. I'm just going to take my utility knife and score it about 3 times on my marks, and then this particle board stuff breaks really easily. So you can just break it where you scored each one of those markings. And then I always like to make sure that it's going to fit before I move forward. So to hold these, I'm going to flip it over, and I'm going to be using 4 of the tumbling tower pieces to place in each corner. So you're not going to want to put anything heavy in this. If you do, you would certainly want to put like a real piece of wood or something more sturdy for a bottom. I'm just attaching this for video purposes with hot glue, but I do recommend you put something like Gorilla Glue on there so it'll have a little bit sturdier hold for those tumbling tower pieces. And then again, this particle board's a little flimsy, so I wouldn't put anything heavy in there. I'm going to use mine to display some greenery. Using a sign from Dollar Tree, which is actually more like a picture frame, I removed the backing and set the backing to the side. I can use that for another DIY. I took pliers and removed all of the metal pieces on the back of this frame. And then I'm going to take some barbecue skewers from Dollar Tree, and I'm going to use 3 of those. So I just tried to make sure that I found 3 of the straightest ones that I could find. I made a marking on the middle of each of the short ends of the frame, and then I'm going to measure the inside portion of the frame so that my barbecue skewer will rest nice right there where the backing was. I just cut the barbecue skewer down, and then I always like to hold it in place to make sure everything's going to fit before I glue this down. I used hot glue to hold this into place. And then I'll take and measure the long ends to make sure that I have equal distance for all of the 6 panes. So I'll know exactly where to place the other 2 barbecue skewers when I get ready to glue those on there. I also made sure that I made a marking on the middle barbecue skewer because I'm also going to add some glue there. Then I took my measurements to determine how long I needed each one of those skewers to be, cut those down, and then I can glue those into place. Now, they are going to bow just a little bit because you're resting them on the back of that middle skewer. So to hold that in place, I'm going to use hot glue, and then to hold that there just long enough for the glue to set up. But once I have the other one in place, I will go back in and add hot glue on top of each one of the ends of the skewers that match up to the back of the frame. And make sure that glue has set before you do any painting or staining. I'm also going to use 2 of these wooden crates from Dollar Tree, and I am just going to hot glue them end to end. And then I'm going to take my antique wax made by Waverly to go over this piece. Using a brush, I like to just apply the wax, and then you can take a paper towel or a cloth and just smear that in and sort of lighten it up a little bit to give it more of an aged, distressed look. I also made sure that I went in between every one of the slats and I covered the entire piece, including the bottom as well as the inside. I took the same wax and went over this entire picture frame. Now this is not real wood on the outside of the frame, so I did have to go in and touch that up a little bit in certain spots once the wax had dried. Taking 3 of the tumbling tower pieces, I also stained those with the same wax. I'm going to use those as a support to hold the top of that window frame to the back of the crates. Using some hot glue, I can just glue it to the top of the back part of the crates, but then these tumbling tower pieces are really going to give it a nice joint between the window frame and the bottom of the crate there. And I'll just put one on each end and one in the middle. Let the wax set up, and then you can decorate it. And this is such a super cute piece. I really do like how this one turned out. To decorate mine after, of course, the wax is dried, I'm going to use some of those very small terracotta pots that you can pick up at Dollar Tree. I did not have 4 on hand. 4 would fit perfectly in this. I did have 3, however, so I'm going to add those 3 and add some boxwood greenery in each one of those. And then for a cute little touch on the end, I'm going to use this cute watering spout that I picked up at Dollar Tree. It's on a stake, and it's very easy to remove that metal stake. I just twisted it around until I got it nice and loose, and then I took my pliers and popped that off. Just be careful not to cut yourself because that is metal. And then I can just set it right there on the corner. I'm using 2 of these wire baskets from Dollar Tree. They measure 3 inches by 8 3/4 of an inch by 2 inch. After I remove the tag, I am going to use matte black spray paint made by Krylon. Take these outside and give them one good coat all the way around. I am also using 2 of these glass jars that look like milk jugs from Dollar Tree and some black chalk paint. I get my black chalk paint from Dollar General. I love this stuff. I'm going to go over the design in the very front with the circle and the wording, as well as the top and bottom rim for both of these jars. I'm going to allow that paint to dry thoroughly, and then I'm going to take some white chalk paint, which is the Folk Art White Adirondack, and I'm going to go over this entire jar completely with 2 coats, allowing it to dry in between coats. I also paint the top rim as well as down inside of the rim a little bit and the bottom. And I'm going to do that for both of these jars. Now once they're dry, this is how it looks. You can still see the design, but I want to bring that out. And I started off with my sanding sponge. It's a very fine grit, and it was not bringing the design out as much as I wanted it to. So I took a 150 grit sandpaper, and I'm going to go over this design very carefully and bring out the wording and the circles. And then I'm also going to go over the top rim as well. It's just going to bring that black chalk paint out. So we're just removing that layer of white chalk paint to reveal the black layer. And I'm going to do the exact same thing for both of these jars. And they turn out so gorgeous. I am in love with how these turned out. I'm going to use some twine and wrap this around underneath the top rim a few times. And I'll take this jar and then set it down inside of the basket. So it's going to rest at the bottom of the basket. And then I'm going to hold my finger in place where the twine is in the front. And I'm going to take one end, feed it underneath the rim of the jar through the back, around the center part of the basket, and then feed it back through to come underneath the rim on the opposite side of the jar. Once I have that in place, I'm going to hold it again in the front, and I'll take the opposite end So it's going to wrap right around that center piece in the back. Take the opposite end, pull that through just like I did the other side, wrap it around that center piece in the back, feed it through, and make sure it stays underneath the rim of the jar. Once I have both ends in the front, I'm going to tie that very tightly, and then I'm just going to make a simple shoestring bow. And then once I have my bow made, I can adjust the length of the bow at the top and make sure everything's nice and tight. And then I can trim off the excess twine. I'm going to take that excess twine and create a hanger at the top of the basket. On the backhand side of the two outer wires, I'm going to double knot this on each side, pull it really tightly, and I'm pulling it tightly as I go. Then I can trim that excess off at the hanger. And I'm going to do the exact same thing for the other basket and jar. So you've got a nice hanger at the top, and then this is how it's attached on the back. And these turned out so beautiful. I just put a few florals in there. I love how this project turned out, and I hope you guys like it too.